Good evening. I'd like to welcome everybody to the special meeting, October 24th, 2023, of the Milford Planning and Zoning Board. If we could please stand for the pledge and a moment of silence. Thank you. Meg, if you could please call the roll.
Mr. Austin and Mr. Zacharides are not here. Mr. Castagnoli. You are here, are you not? He's here. Mr. Hirsch.
Here.
Mr. Cater.
Present.
Mr. Collegian.
Present.
Mr. Mortimer.
Present.
Mr. Sadi.
Present.
And Chairman Quish.
I'm here as well. The topic tonight is a public hearing to provide the opportunity for the public to comment on the draft 2032 Plan of Conservation and Development that we call the Pocd. This is a public hearing, so the public will be invited to speak. I would just like to acknowledge staff and several years of effort in putting this together. We had a Pocd subcommittee with Mr. Cater, Mr. Castagnoli, myself, former members Scott Marlowe and Peg Kearney started this, it's probably 3 years running we had a subcommittee. So there's a lot of effort and thought and time put into it. That being said, David, if you'd just like to give us sort of a higher level look before we open the microphone to the public.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, as you said, this process of updating the plan of conservation started at least 3 years, maybe even at this point 4 years ago. As you know, the plan of conservation development needs to be updated every 10 years. So this is the current cycle. This plan, once adopted, will be effective until 2032. I can read you the staff memo if you'd like, which just sort of summarizes what this is, the process it's been going through for its adoption, and ultimately where the document goes, after its adoption. It's up to you. I can read it. You have it in front of you.
And it's available for the public on the internet, on the website, correct?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah. So we won't put you through all that.
Yeah. I'll say quickly, though, that the plan has been reviewed by DEEP, and they very much liked it. It's also been approved by the South Central Council of Governments. They had recommended one change, which was already incorporated into the plan. And the Board of Aldermen has also endorsed the plan.
Okay, thank you. This is a public hearing. If anybody would like to come up and speak, please come to the microphone and state your name and address for the record, and try to keep your comments to about 3 minutes. Welcome.
Good evening. I'm Michelle Kramer. I live at 104 West River Street, and I did speak with several of you during some of the subcommittee hearings, and along with the Historic Preservation Commission. I'm Bill Silver, who is the chair. I'm the vice chair of that commission, and also the president of the Milford Preservation Trust. So I thank you. I know it was a long haul and a lot of work. I just had a few things that I was hoping to address with you. Milford is the second oldest town, city in the state, second only to Wethersfield. And as such, it certainly is deserving of historic preservation and an awareness of how important that our historic and colonial past is. One of the goals of the commission is to foster that sense of awareness. So having said that, I would like to see a little bit more substance, not just acknowledging the importance of historic preservation, but also perhaps some guidelines, because there is reference to design standards. You say that in the city's historic center, design standards have been incorporated, but we would like to actually note what those design standards are. For example, in the 2 historic districts, those should be the Secretary of Interior's design standards. So maybe there could be mention of that or even a link to that. And another thing that's very important, it's a little bit misleading. There's discussion about the 2 historic districts, historic district number 1 and 2, and then the fact that there was an ordinance passed which allowed for the creation of the Historic Preservation Commission. It says here that a property owner wishing to make certain changes to a historic property that is not in one of Milford's 2 historic districts must first obtain an application. That's a misleading statement, though. It should say a property owner of a state registered, it should be on the state register of historic places, and only then does our commission have purview over it. For example, there are plenty of historic homes. I can think of several from the 1690 down in Woodmont, but they're not in a historic district, nor are they on the state register. We have no purview over those properties. So that's an important change to make, because I think it can be misleading. And the other thing I did want to say, the commission did send out a letter in 2021, February 22nd, where we discussed the very troublesome overlapping of the MCDD and the National River Park Historic District. So later in your document, when you talk about land use and perhaps reworking the zoning regulations, our suggestion is that the MCDD gets an overhaul too, because there are properties that are included in MCDD which ought not to be. First Church and its auxiliary properties are in the MCDD, and Laurelton Hall is in the MCDD. So our commission strongly urges a reworking of the Milford Center Design District. Thank you. Thank you for your effort.
Thank you. Anyone else would like to come up and speak, just come on up.
Hi there. My name is Holly Swirsky. I'm the owner of 36 Shell Avenue, and in fact, my family's owned that property since 1919. And I read your opening statement, which sounds really good about what your plans are for Milford, and I had a question on this one that says promoting economic, social, and quality of life in your vision statement. And I have concerns that the members of this planning and zoning board have not been to Shell Avenue, which is primarily used for dog walkers, people pushing baby carriages, and in all charitable runs. And there's a proposal to put out an apartment building that's going to house 20 apartments, which is going to increase traffic and decrease the quality of life, which is at present.
Yeah, one thing I can tell you is that at our next meeting, we're going to have a public hearing about Shell Avenue. So that's really the appropriate time to bring up that as a specific street.
To your vision statement.
Yeah, but it's,
Thank you very much.
but yeah, that's really where you'll get the rubber will meet the road.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Good evening. Thank you for all the work you've done, first of all, on this. I know it was a lot of work, but thank you. My name is Carolyn Alling. I'm a member of the Conservation Commission. I live at 29 Rivercliff Drive. I just had some things that I had spoken about during one of the Zoom meetings that you had. And there was just 3 bullet points. And part of it was when you talked about the open space funding, not all the accounts and sources of funding are talked about in this POCD. So they only mention just the fees in lieu of, but there are other sources of funding for open space, and I think those should be put in as well. And then when you talked about the Beaverbrook Trail, I had said something about that it should be a priority to inform the property owners of the responsibility to maintain that property so that we don't end up with another fire there. And then Edgemont Park was talked about as a community garden, but it's really very wet there and wouldn't be suitable. And it's sometimes inundated with salt water too, from the marsh. So I just wanted to mention it and find out if you had any questions for me about it. So that's all I had to say. And you have
Thank
my
you.
testimony already.
Thank you.
Good evening. I am, excuse me, Roger Pocock, 60 Shell Avenue. I'm not going to discuss, Jim, I'm not going to discuss the project of the next public hearing. But my first comment is housing, building neighborhood conforming to the character of the neighborhood. And that's the only point as far as Shell Avenue is concerned. A monstrous big building is not harmonious to the neighborhood. I leave that for your digestion. And I think there are many other parts of this beautiful town. I've been here 22 years, and when we moved to Shell Avenue, my wife and I said after a couple of weeks, oh my God, I think we've died and gone to heaven, because we discovered what a beautiful street it is, walkers and everybody else. I would ask the town, in looking at yourselves, the town for the future, the image of the town, to look very strongly at improving the traffic control, the enforcement of red lights and speeding. And if you know the junction of Surf, Shell, and East Broadway, there is a 4-way red light. Some months ago, you may recall a young man killed himself inadvertently by driving something like 40 miles an hour through it, turning left and killing himself. On an almost daily basis, I find cars coming from the west end of East Broadway optionally deciding whether or not to even slow down, let alone stop. And I have a nice car, and I wish to preserve it. The other thing I would love you to take a pioneering step into the future is, and you can tell I'm not from around here, to use that expression, but other countries have an awful lot of cameras monitoring traffic at intersections as well as speeding. Other towns have started it in New York State, and I would love to see Milford being one of the pioneers of doing that. And if you think about it, that would add to the coffers of the city, the fines, and encourage better behavior. Because in this day and age of invisibility, people drive around and they don't give a damn about anybody else. So I ask the city you folk to look at revamping the image of this beautiful, quiet little town and make it even more desirable, looking at conformity, avoiding or minimizing or even refusing to accept monstrous buildings, and I will use that word deliberately. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Richard Platt of 132 Platt Lane. I don't know if it's me or the sound system. I haven't been able to make out much of what's been said so far. It's loud enough, but just very rumbly. But anyway, I'll do my best. Having looked over the plan, there was several sections talking about affordable housing, and I would put a resounding yes there, that we should provide for that in an area where there is public transportation or near it, rather than way out on the boonies. The other thing, I was quite struck by the fact that in the report that the zoning ordinance is rather confusing and difficult to understand, and I would have to agree with that. And also the maps that you have there, because I can't always tell what area is in what address is in what area or not. I'm specifically concerned about the Milford Center Design District, which I do know includes Prospect Street, but does it include Fowler Field and Wilcox Park? If so, for heaven's sakes, no. Get them off of that district. And then what we've got on Prospect Street, number 67 Prospect Street, was probably the most historic area in town. That was the home lot of the man who led the founding of Milford, the Reverend Peter Pruden, first minister of the First Church. And in his backyard somewhere is the first burying ground where the early settlers were buried without any permanent markers, because they believed that a gravestone or some permanent marker was considered to be vanity. In any case, it's interesting that the approved apartment and office complex on that property was approved several years ago, and it seems nothing has happened. And also, the house was supposed to be the house on the property was supposed to be rehabilitated, and again, nothing seems to have happened. It's just sort of subject to what we call demolition by neglect. I think you've got to put something in there in your regulations about that. And then going further up, First Church and the Plymouth Building seem to be included in that. Why? Is someday the First Church going to fold up and sell their property and go elsewhere? I doubt it. Then the north side of West Main Street, which includes the 18th century Carrington House, is in that. And then it looks from the map like Laurelton Hall is included. Now, are the Good Sisters suddenly decide to close their school and allow apartments and condominiums to be built there? Heavens, I hope not. But anyway, all these areas, really, we've got to take a good hard look and give some stronger. I know that you have some excellent language on historic preservation. Let's put some teeth in it. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, is that correct? Yeah. Okay, my name is Catherine Odie. I do live on Shell Avenue, but I understand that meeting is next week. I do want to talk about something that pertains to this. I did print this whole thing out and read it. I really appreciate all of the work that went into it. And I have a lot of questions, but I'm going to stick to one area. Our house is at the bottom of the hill, so it's right in the most flood-prone area. So the issues that I had with this, our beach is called Fort Trumbull Beach. We're not identified anywhere in here. So I'm not, that would be page 3 and 4. So I'm not sure why that is. But I do know that what that means is that we're always left out. For instance, when a beach is closed, when there are pollution issues, we're overlooked. So when you call the number to see if the beach is closed, our beach is not included. And we're not included on this map, which means I don't know what applies to us in terms of other issues like construction on our street being related to drainage and sewage. So I would like to know how we're identified, basically, is what I'm asking. I know we're a private beach, but are we municipal, federal, city? I would like more information on that. And then on page 18, you have a flood erosion control board mentioned. On page 20, you state that the 10-year resiliency plan, and this is quoting, will be developed in close coordination with the community, especially those that are most likely to be impacted by sea level rise. On page 14 and 15, you have information about the flood zones and flood hazard reductions, specifically that there are 3,800 structures that remain susceptible to serious property damage. That's very alarming. I believe our house is one of them because we're not lifted yet. I think it would be important. I think what I'm trying to stress is that we would like to be more involved with knowing what's going on. There's a flood erosion control board I've never heard of. We get a letter once a year from the fire marshal telling us that we can be more involved just by calling him. But we know nothing about what's going on, and we now feel that they're beginning to have an impact on us because we would like to speak up about what's going on our street, and we think this is part of it. Where we live, it's incredibly narrow. The street has been flooding for my whole life. We've owned this house since the early 70s, and we would like to know what these 3,800 structures are, where they are in Milford, and if there should be anything special that should be designated when buildings are being developed near those structures. Should that be taken into consideration? And in closing, I would like to say, as a shoreline resident, again, I want to reiterate, we would just like to be more involved. I think we're not getting the communication about the coastal issues that we need. I know that Milford prides itself on, I think it's 17 miles of coast that we have here. We promote it. I feel that our strip, we're left out, and I do feel that it has something to do, it should have an impact on the street side and what is being done with the building. So I may be backdooring that in there, but I think it's a very relevant issue because the infrastructure of the street is affected by the fact that of the flood zone that we are in. And if we have any of those 3,800 houses there, a developer should know that. And so we would like to know what those 3,800 houses are. And that's in here, and I would like to see that map in here, if possible.
Okay. Well, we'll look at each of the things that you mentioned, and I do think that there will be outreach to any committee that wants input from the local residents, and so keep your eye on the Milford web presence, and I will advocate for making sure people are as informed as we can make them. We want the input. I mean, we're here for people in Milford. That's what we're all doing. So thank you for pointing that out, and we'll look at each of the things you brought up.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
See you next week.
Yep, anyone, just come on up whenever you want.
Hello, my name is Debbie Fuchs. I'm at 17 Shell. I'm not very good at speaking in public, so I am scared to death. What I'm concerned about is I was reading through the program, and I see that the shoreline of Milford is a big draw to, as far as bringing revenue in. We own a business in Milford, Archie Moore's, and the boats come into the harbor, they sail around all through our beaches, which I think Katie said there are about 17 miles of beaches in Milford. And I'm concerned that we preserve the charm and quaintness of our harbor. We're a quaint old New England town, and I think if the building restrictions start allowing huge buildings, I mean, it might start with one, it's fine, I'm not really bringing up what's going on there, but I'm concerned that in the future, if there aren't restrictions put on the shoreline, which is a big draw for people from Maine to Florida with their boats. I know people that go down to Florida with their boats. And I mean, we live on the beach, and I see all summer long, the harbor is full of boats. We have the paddle boat that goes out to enjoy our shoreline. I know that what happened in Florida, we've been going to Florida for 30 years, and I've seen A1A go from cute little, small motels to humongous 30, 40, 50, even more floor high-rises where people are on the beach now, getting in between them. I'm trying to get the sun. I just don't want to see that happen in Milford. I think that there should be some sort of, law or some kind of restriction on how our shoreline picturesqueness is changed or impacted by, the building codes. I'm not sure if that's the right word. I'm like shaking now. But anyway, I think you understand, we get a lot of traffic in to our restaurant, and I know all the other restaurants in town and the shops and all the businesses get a lot of people coming in and enjoying it, and I'm just afraid that in the future, the shoreline's just going to be so changed. I mean, the possibility of it being changed to, a hotel-type apartment buildings is just going to kill the charm of our town, which I absolutely adore and love. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Sarah Bromley, 27 Norway Street. I just wanted to say that thank you for all the POCD has a lot of great stuff in it. I applaud that. A couple things that I would like to encourage us to think about is that, if I understand it correctly, the POCD is really just a vision that's going to shape Milford. So it's not laws, but it's like guideposts, right? And I hope that listening to all this input you get, that we can together come up with a vision that will work, will take all of this input into account. I don't think it's impossible to come up with a plan that can keep Milford Milford. So a couple of the things I would hope we could recommend, that we could come up with more housing that, people use the word affordable, but more housing options that could fit people with a variety of budgets, like my daughter, who's living at home. Think about our public housing. We haven't had any public housing in a long, long time, like 70s probably. Can we just figure out how many more housing units we actually need or want? Just come up with that number and then figure out a way to get those housing units so that people who grew up in Milford, raised families in Milford, can stay in Milford and aren't priced out, because a lot of my friends, that's happening to them, and it's sad. It's our youth, it's our seniors. It could be me very soon. I don't want it to be me. I'd like to stay here. So yeah, how many more housing units we need, want or need. And I think only 2 of our 9 commercial areas are in the POCD for changes. So I'm curious if we can learn more about what's happening in the other areas. And yeah, one thing I'm certain of is that I don't think we need any more car dealerships, honestly. I don't think it even benefits Milford that much in our taxes and our mill rate and all that stuff. So I do feel a little bummed when I drive by where the Howard Johnson's was, and I think, wow, if that could have been housing, it wouldn't have bothered any neighborhoods, wouldn't have disrupted it. So yeah, I do think, again, in closing, the POCD can achieve this equitable balance, a balance of increasing housing units so that Milford folks can stay here. It doesn't have to change neighborhoods. There are ways to create gentle density, like the ADUs that you've been so great about. You could drive through a neighborhood with accessory dwelling units, and I challenge most of my friends to even spot them. Like, I can spot them now because I know what I'm looking for, and I'll see spaces go like, wow, that'd be a great accessory dwelling unit. So anyway, thank you so much for having this, and I hope that, like, you don't feel yelled at. I know we can't, and I know that you're not allowed to comment here. I would love sometime if we could figure out if there's like ways to have a community conversation, structure that so we could be in a situation where there could be an exchange of ideas. Because anyway, because I really appreciate all of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It's a one and done kind of night.
Hi, I'm Vin Bagdasarian. I live at 27 Thompson Street. I hear a lot of people here, and I'll probably agree with most of them and disagree a little bit. I live in Milford, and I love living in the little city with the big heart. And if I wanted to live in a big city, I'd move down to Norwalk or Bridgeport or Hartford or something like that. I don't like seeing the city evolve into something monstrous. And that's a really big concern for me. I know we don't have the infrastructure for it. I mean, yesterday I couldn't get from one end of New Haven Avenue to the other without just sitting in line. It was ridiculous. And a lot of that has to do with just, knocking down one house and putting in 30 units here and there and everywhere like that. And I know a lot of people will argue about, we're going to improve the grand list and it'll bring in tax revenue, but that doesn't really work with residential housing because, you got to send those kids to school. Now we got to build schools. The roads aren't wide enough. It's a big problem. And we really should focus more on, I think, non-residential development, more commercial. I mean, turning a mall into apartments, that doesn't really work. I mean, if you've been to the Chapel Square Mall in New Haven, that used to be, Macy's and all that used to be there. It's not really very pretty anymore. And I don't want to see Milford degenerate into something that's just overpopulated and no longer Milford. What Mr. Platt had to say about historic preservation, yeah, we have areas that are historic, but I think the city in itself is historic. And we really should be careful with not overdeveloping it and putting some restrictions in place to keep things at a level pace. And yeah, I agree with affordable housing, whoever said that, but sometimes that translates into diminishing my personal property value to make it affordable for somebody else. And I don't want to see that happen. Does this all make sense? I mean, because it's, we can't make everybody happy. I believe your responsibility belongs to the people who live here, not the people from New York who want to move here. There's a big difference. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak? Seeing none, is there any reason to, Steve.
Are we still able to submit comments in writing on this plan?
you're welcome to email the city planner.
Good evening, members of the board here, and Chairman Quish and Mr. Sulkus. I'm here, Steve Johnson, Assistant Public Works Director. Previously, I had the great opportunity to also play in the role of the Open Space Manager. I was responding to an email request for just an opportunity to review what I think is a really, continues to be a great structure and format for this POCD. Going through it, wearing both hats, I submitted some comments that I hope would be viewed as positive and constructive to help enhance what's already existing, all the good work that's already been accomplished. And I'm just really here to say, if you have any questions or follow-up, feel free to reach out to me to provide any clarification or context on that. And I hope some of the context that I provided will also supplement what DEP has already responded to in a very positive way, and the South Central Regional Council of Governments. So I'm just here in a supportive role. Thank you.
Thank you, and thanks for your previous input. It was listened to. Anyone else? Any member of the board would like to make any comment in the public hearing?
Mr. Chairman, when we had all those meetings, our POCD subcommittee, were those public meetings, Dave?
Yes, they were.
And they were, okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? If not, we'll close the public hearing. I'd like to thank everybody for their comments. I know that we have had a number of public forums over the last few years, and a lot of people have come from very different walks of life and different interests to help form this final document, and a lot of what's in there was contributions from members of the public and members of the various sort of organizations, whether it's historic or whether it was a beach organization or whatever. But thank you very much. At this point, I would like to say that, we will take a look at whatever is been mentioned here, and whatever the, whether it was SCROD or whether it was DEEP. Made a few minor suggestions that if they align with what the general tenor of the document is, we can make Scrivener's changes. But that being said, I'd like to hear a motion to approve this. Mr. Sadi.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman Quish. I have the privilege to make the following motion. I move to approve as presented in accordance with CGS Congenital General Statutes 8-23, the adoption of the Milford Plan of Conservation Development 2032, dated October 23rd, 23, which is today's date. If passed, the effective date would be November 3rd of 2023.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I will second.
We have 2 seconds. Any discussion on the motion? Mr. Sadi.
Thank you very much. As one of the members of the board who did not serve on the the POCD committee, I do want to recognize, as you had done at the very beginning of the meeting, all those members that worked hard. But most importantly, I think that what is helpful for the members of the public that are here today, members of the public did participate regularly in helping to come up with this plan that we have, and it is a plan, and it is something that should be workable, and it's something that's important, and I'm glad to see people that felt that they might have been nervous speaking here, not sure that they could do it. You all did it, and that's a thing that's very helpful for you to know, that for us as a board, we're happy to have the public input. Nothing is 100% perfect, we understand that, but I can see that even based on the most recent materials, such as the letter from DEEP, South Central Regional Council of Governments, some comments by other members of the public, they've been incorporated, and if there's any questions, but I believe Mr. Sulkus in his original summary indicated these comments were incorporated. It is a work in progress, and it's still something that will be able to be used. I'm very proud of the work of the committee. I didn't participate in it, but I think that I recognize the hard work they did, but they did so with the help of the public and all of the people that are vested and interested in making Milford an excellent place to live. And I'm very proud to have this before us tonight and ask you to affirm my motion and join in making this the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments? We have a motion and a second. If you would please call the roll.
Mr. Castagnoli. Mr. Hirsch.
Yes.
Mr. Cater.
Yes.
Mr. Collegian.
I'm with the motion.
Mr. Mortimer.
I am with the motion.
Mr. Sadi.
I am with the motion.
And Chairman Quish.
I'm also with the motion. Motion passes. And motion to adjourn. All right, we're done. Thanks again.